I'm Ed Jackson, and this is my 1971 Plymouth Sports Fury. So the car I had before this was a Jaguar XJ6, my favourite car of all time, and I ran that for about a year. And I was thinking about getting something different, and a friend of mine had a 1974 Chevy Impala, and I wasn't interested in American cars at all. And coming back from a show one day, he said, "No, have a drive of this." I thought, I'm going to have to get one of these. I'm going to have to get one of these American cars. And I was looking around, tried to find something cheap. And there were a lot of cheap cars, but they were absolute rock boxes. My brother, he said, "Look at this." And it said, Plymouth, 60s styling, brings spare pair of underpants. And it was cheap, and it was fairly near. So I went to look at it, and the condition generally wasn't very good. It was solid, the floor was solid. There were holes in the bodywork, the seats were knackered, the bloke had had it before, just put an engine in. The only thing he'd wired in were the fuel gauge, so the temp gauge didn't work, nothing else worked on it, but it was solid. So I said, yeah, I'll buy this to use as a daily car, really. So after a week, I changed the insurance over from the Jag onto the Plymouth and used it as a daily car. I bought it, this was back in 1988, so I've had this car quite a long time now. I did do a DVLA check on it after I had it a couple of years, and I found out it actually came from Belgium. It's a European spec car, so the speedometer is in kilometres. The glass, which would normally be tinted on an American car, was clear. Somebody had brought it into the country and sprayed it black. Took all the trim off it, took the vinyl roof off it, took the side markers off it, filled all that in, smoothed all the bodywork off, took the door handles off, smoothed them off. But by the time I bought it, it all started going downhill. There were holes in it. When I bought the car, the first thing I did, I didn't want to spend any money on it if I could help it. Bodged the holes up with filler, the wheel arches. And after I'd had it a few years, I thought, I'm going to have to do something with it. I weren't that good with repairing cars, bodywork-wise. So I actually paid somebody to do a bit of a restoration on it. He plated up the holes, sprayed it red, not this shade of red, but a different shade of red. Looking back, it weren't that good a job, but the car extended its life. I was able to use it a bit more, and eventually we got up to the year 2000 thereabouts, and the bodywork had really started to go downhill again. I was living with a girlfriend in this flat. We were looking to buy a house anyway and get married, so bought a house, built this garage, which took me like 3 years because I wanted a builder. Built the garage big enough to repair the car, and I thought this is going to take me 2 or 3 years to get this car sorted, and it turned out to be much longer than that. Year 2000-ish, 2003, 2002, I finished building the garage, set to work on the car, and it finally went back on the road in 2015. Still not complete now, there's still things that need doing to it, but I wasn't interested in making a show car, I just wanted to get it usable again. It took much longer than what I thought it would, because the steelwork, I did the steelwork myself, started making panels up. Not experienced in doing it. I started up making a rear quarter, and I thought, yeah, it looked something like it should do, and I carried on from there. But once you get under the skin, you start finding all sorts of problems. The bulkhead were rotted, where the water runs down the side, in front of the bulkhead down the wings, that had all completely rotted. The floors were pretty good. I only had to make a small part of the passenger and driver side floor. Entire boot floor, it was a waste of time trying to do anything with that. I had to make a new one. All the seam welds over the back axle, they all needed doing. So the whole thing took me much longer and much more involved than I thought it would be. And then you start going on to the electrics and bits in the dash and stuff. And I thought I didn't want to do it, but I had to do it because I thought I've got this far. I'm going to have to it's false economy not to carry on doing it. So it hasn't had a body off restoration or anything like that, and it hasn't had a complete rewire, but I've done as much as I thought I needed to at the time, So when I got this car, the engine was a 5.2 318. The engine had just been put in by the previous owner just as a stopgap, I think. It was out of a right-hand drive Barracuda. And there was nothing wrong with that engine at all. It's quite a good engine, quite a torquey engine, even with the 2-barrel. And but just for experience, I thought, you know, is it a big block? No, it's not a big block. So I thought I'm gonna have to get a big block, not to satisfy people, but just for the experience of doing it. I thought it'd be interesting to do. I hadn't put an engine in before. I thought I'll learn how to do it. And I was looking around for an engine, preferably a 440. I came across Chrysler Cordoba, an entire car that somebody had crashed, and I bought the entire car. And me and my friend got a trailer, brought it back to his house, took the engine out with like an homemade sort of engine crane. The first engine crane I tried were one I'd got for like, you know, normal sized cars. And as we were pulling away on this engine, the actual crane were going down, the legs were going down, the engine was staying where it was. So he said, well, I know somebody's got like an homemade one made out of scaffolding poles. So I went and fetched that, and these scaffolding poles were about 12.5 foot long. Got them in this car, took back seat out, pushed them all the way through to the passenger footwell, and actually managed to close the boot with these like scaffolding poles. So we got this engine out, got it back to my house, and I spent, I don't know, maybe a year doing that up. Didn't have a complete rebuild. It just had the top end done, new cam, slightly higher lift cam. And again, I didn't really know what we were doing, so we're like getting advice of people and just doing the best I could with it. And that was a 400 cubic inch. So it's not right for the car, but it's still a big block. And that was 1994. And that engine's still in the car now. The interior was only eventually done when I restored the car again in 2000 onwards. The interior was originally all green, everything, because the car was originally green. Seat belts, carpet, seats, dashboard, everything green, headlining. And I had to change that to black. So the seats paid me to do that. Dashboard sprayed with vinyl paint, centre console vinyl paint. Headlining, I paid me to do that. The door cards were actually shot. They were like, they got water damage, they're all warped. They're like a metal top piece, and the rest of it's like a sort of hardboard type thing. So I kept the metal piece and made a new piece out of hardboard. Found somebody who replicated the like blown vinyl effect, and she did like a really good job. And the rest of it I finished off with like this wood trim myself, which I think should have been original. Carpet, that's an easy job. You just buy the carpet in, fit it yourself. The centre console, the wood trim from that was missing. And there's a company called Detroit Muscle Industries that do that as a kit. Other thing about the centre console that's unusual is it has got seatbelt clips, and you never saw them on the B bodies. And I've since found out they only put them on the C bodies. One had always been broken when I bought it. So I eventually got around to actually machining some out of aluminium, CNC machining them to replicate it. I think most Furies were probably bench seats, but because it's a sport, they put bucket seats in. The plastic they used for the seat backs, it was very brittle, and that they were smashed when I got the car. So I did use the Cordoba seats for 20 odd years until I got around to sorting the real seats out. And luckily I found there's one place makes reproduction fiberglass backs for the seats, because we've been a full-size car, you know, a lot of companies aren't interested in making parts for them. I didn't paint it. I had a friend who a panel a week sort of thing. I did all the steel work. He helped me out with some of the more difficult bits around the windscreen. I was really struggling with that. We just did a bit every week. I would say I was helping him, and we just sprayed a panel every week. 1 week it would be bonnet, 1 week doors. Pushed the car out so we got a bit more room. The vinyl roof, I couldn't find anybody who would come and do it on site. Plenty of people said, you know, I'll make you one, but you know, you've got to fit it yourself. The bloke who made me the vinyl roof, he made it from the size I'd given him over the phone. and he came and fitted it, made an absolutely fantastic job of it. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do it. The trim that finishes the vinyl roof off, that were all missing. I had to locate that before I even thought about having a vinyl roof put back on it, because during the time I had the car, I've found out these only came with a vinyl roof, and it's got the mouldings along the tops of the doors that were all missing. I had to find that, but eventually I found the right pieces. So, and when we got the paint off, we did find that the holes had been filled in, so you actually were able to use the original holes to refit all the trim. When I first got the car, it got slot mag wheels on the back, just steel wheels on the front, and I ran it for most of its life with that. Eventually I got a set of chrome wheels for the front. I don't know why, because it didn't match the back ones. And people said, why have you got different wheels on? I have no idea what we're doing with that. But when I finished the restoration this time round, I thought it's time to get a set of matching wheels. So I went for a classic American racing wheels. It's a classic wheel, and it seemed to suit the car. White letter tyres. You may have noticed it hasn't got any door handles. That were done when the person who had it before me took everything off, the side markers. They put the solenoid on the boot and the doors, and originally it was like just a push button, and then I changed it to infrared remote control when that technology came along. So when I restored when I put the side markers back, the vent in the bonnet, the trim, the vinyl roof, I left the door handles off because I just thought it suited the car, the shape of the car. I mean, they call them fuselage cars these, because if you look from the back, it actually looks like an aircraft fuselage. So the door handles just seem like, if I put door handles back, it just wouldn't suit the car. So it's just a sort of little thing. One of the more recent things I did when I restored the car for the last time was I got the front bumper chromed. Previous to that, I just couldn't afford to have it done, and that's why the back one's painted body colour, because it's got a hole in it. I thought, I could weld it up, and at the time I thought I'll paint it body colour because it's just like it's integral to the car sort of thing. But I think it needs a little bit of chrome on it, so I got the front bumper chromed. It's mainly going to shows, days out at weekends. When I was in my 20s, I used it as an everyday car. I use it all year round. But it's not really practical, especially with what petrol's costing. I won't be able to afford to run it now every day. So we just enjoy going out at weekends, try and do as many shows as we can, just really to see the other cars, really. And also, if you're going to a show, it's your destination, isn't it? So you get to see places and go places you would never afford to go in. First week I got the car, and I'd changed my insurance over. So it was now my everyday car. I was driving to work and I had a 30-mile round trip. And during that first week, the radiator just started disintegrating. I noticed the radiator's leaking, and I got some of that milliput stuff. It's like two little putty things you mix together. Blocked it off, job sorted. Yeah, got to work, it's leaking somewhere else. So during the week, more and more of these veins in the radiator were leaking. So it got to Friday, and I've got like this big 8-inch hole in the middle of the radiator, which is, it sounds ludicrous now. And I used to pick somebody up on the way to work. I said, mate, you're going to have to get a bottle of water, we're going to have to fill the radiator up. And so he took cap off, pouring water in, it was pouring out the bottom of the radiator just as much as I was pouring it in. And I'd still got about 6 miles to get to work. So I thought, I don't want to get sacked or anything. I'll drive it. I'll drive to work. Gets to work and engine's smoking. I didn't know how hot it was because the temperature gauge weren't wired up. And I must have driven it home again. I must have blocked the radiator off again with this milliput stuff. So that weekend I thought I'm going to have to get a radiator. So not having a lot of money, I was trying to run the car on a budget. Went to the scrapyard. I looked around, found the biggest radiator I could, which were a Rover V8, and luckily it was big enough to cope with the small block engine light. And I ran that radiator for many years without any problems. I've had it like 30 odd years, so it has had its breakdowns. I think it's only had the flatbed Hall of Shame, ride of shame once, and that's when the fuel pump went and I couldn't do anything with it. Every other time it's managed to get back under its own steam. The main problems with this car, difficulty restoring it, is finding parts, specific body parts. Because it's a full size, a lot of people don't make parts for it, so it's hard to find trim parts. The indicators on this car are actually clear, and they're offer a 70 model. And I found out the reason for that is because it was made for Europe. They had to have a clear lens with a clear bulb. On the 70 Fury, they ran clear indicators with orange bulbs. When it went to 71, they had clear orange indicators. So really it should have orange indicators, but it was made with clear indicators. So I was looking for those, and I found out that the same ones that's on the Superbird. And so the price is more expensive, stupidly, like, yeah. The biggest achievement with the car is just getting it back on the road. Because when I started it, I thought, you know, like several years into doing it, I thought, there's no way I'm going to get this done. There was so much that would be on my experience that I had to learn how to do. And there were times where I thought, there's no way I'm going to get this back, but you know, you have to stick at it, don't you? Differences between driving an everyday car, obviously, you know, as American car owner told you, sat on the wrong side, so you have to remember to get over to the left, but anybody who's used to these cars will know that. The main thing is it's quite wide, you know, it's like if you're going down a country lane to a show, you got to, sometimes you ain't got a lot of room before you're hitting the white line. I mean, in the early days, when I used to drive an everyday car, I weren't bothered about scratching it too much or denting it, and I used to take it in multi-storey car parks, you know, just to see if I could do it. I know it's a bit stupid now, but it's nice to drive. I mean, the steering is quite light. It has an upgraded steering box, but I wish I'd gone to the next grade up, but I didn't want the steering too heavy at low speeds. So once you're on the motorway, it is a little bit on the too light a side. There's not many people these days say they hate it. I mean, when I first got it, a lot of people say, "Oh, you know, American crap," like, you know. But I think these days people are more tolerant and they're much more open to seeing different cars on the road. So you do get people, you know, stopping and looking and pointing and stuff, and I think it makes most people smile. That's, you know. So one of the things I like about the car is the headlamp doors. A lot of cars, the vacuum, but it's actually an electric motor that runs a bar. And when they go up really slowly and they come back down with a real bang, like, you know, you imagine a small child putting the fingers in there at a show, sort of thing. You don't want it, like, you know, but it is one of the things I like about the car. It was only the Sport Fury and GT that had the headlamp doors. The ones before had open headlights. But when I first got the car, I didn't even know what, you know, it were a Fury. It's only like after doing a bit of research afterwards, I found out what it was, because there was no badging on it, sort of thing, like, you know.